to sort of concentrate on sex with your work. It's a bit icky. Love and intimacy is a fascinating subject. Yeah, I think it's very crucial. I'm really speaking for me. Personal is political. Very incorrect. And it was a sort of secret language. Those voices have been marginalised for so long. The challenge of tough work. I feel like I've got nothing to lose. It's often directed towards gay men like breaking more rules. I don't know whether glamour is frivolous. It's us being fabulous. And it's a form, it's fun. It's something we should be proud of. It's one we shouldn't deny. Get my point of view across. The relationship that gay men have with one another. It's what turns me on. I am a gay man. Conservative bourgeois in a gay identity. Personal is political. The libido. It wasn't a particular choice. It's not working in a collage framework. You could listen to a Patsy Cline song. Right, top's a left, bottom's a right. Overtly talking about. I mean, I loved it as a kind of this fucking. Because I mean, I don't think we've got one version of how it is to be gay now. Art that was created for a gay audience. What are your rules? What are your boundaries? Life's too short to be always educating people. Start now.
Whenever you like.
Oh. Okay. This is called A Short History of Facial Hair. I'm a visual artist, I'm middle class, I'm a pervert, and I was diagnosed HIV positive in 1986. In 1965, I had sex with a man for the first time. It was a Saturday night, I was 13 and I was 40. I walked around Fitzroy Gardens for hours until I got into the front seat of a Blue Valiant, driven by a man with a hairy chest wearing Aramis. I used to have casual sex, you know, heaps and heaps, like, for years until I had a relationship when I was 18. First love relationship. But
how was that?
Rules, how was it? It was terrific because it was a guy who was involved in setting up gay liberation here in Sydney, and he was great sex. He was an out gay man that I could relate to. He wasn't some dreadful queen. Well, he was a dreadful queen, but I didn't find that out for ages. He was masculine. He was all those things that I didn't think gay men were allowed to be, and it was the start of my coming out. Well, the early 70s I was doing posters and stuff for gay dances and fundraisers and little buttons and demos. And then I started taking pop art symbols like KY tubes or gay icons like Salminio or Salminio as an actor, darling. He was in Rebel Without a Cause. He was a gay man. He played the role of Plato, and it was a very sweet love story between James Dean and Sal. And Sal was a short, dark Italian boy and very cute. He was a public man. He was open about his gayness. In 1976, I began exhibiting in galleries. My work was concerned with questions of identity, culture, history, and homosex. Well, I've still got that 70s thing of, you know, the personal is political. And I think sex is a fascinating subject. I mean, it's just part of my identity, and my work's always concerned identity, and sex is one of those things that drives me. I mean, I've got a friend pointed out to me a long time ago, my obsession seems to be sex, fashion, music, and they're pretty interesting subjects to sort of use as themes, and it's what turns me on. In 1979, I was living in New York, working as a hustler to pay the rent and having a ball. It was great, and I had, you know, $100 in my pocket. Some guys were like fully fledged freaks. I remember often the agency would give you a preamble about what the guy was expecting. This one time, they said, you've got to arrive, and as soon as you see the guy, you've got to treat him like an 18-year-old girl, and you're taking him to the prom. Okay, you got it? I said, okay, I can do that. So I arrived, and the guy was middle-aged, fat, bald, hairy, and not in drag, he was just in a suit. And for an hour, I had to treat him like I was a college student coming to pick him up for a date at the prom.
Typical week began with a job fucking a closeted Texas oil baron at the Plaza Hotel, followed by a trip down to the waterfront for some recreational sex, followed by a few hours dancing at the Amble, which opened at 4 a.m. I was living in the West Village in a community of men that took cruising for sex very seriously. I got NSU, amoebas, hepatitis and gonorrhea. I grew my first mustache.
I'd only travelled in Southeast Asia and sort of hippie, sort of, you know, third world countries, and I quite liked that. But America just seemed big and cold. It wasn't a real fascination. The first day I was there, I thought, I could live here. This is comfortable, it was small, it was easy to get around. There was this a gay community like I couldn't believe. You know, the diversity. There weren't just one sort of gay people. There was like a whole spectrum, and I felt like I fitted in. You know, I felt like I belonged. My friend said, "I've got a club you'll like, Paradise Garage." We thought, yeah. One of the most profound experiences I've ever had. The bass was so powerful, you could hear it. Blocks away, flashed up a neon sign with the logo at the end. Passed through a metal detector. Paid your money, checked your code, and then entered the dance floor and bam, missed them. You just got the bass. Temporary sort of African church come powwow. We knew each other by sight. Yes, I sort of loved her. You've got this glow, it's tribal, glamorous, hot dress. It just made you want to cry. We had nicknames for everyone, and she was called to be that it's not a frenetic woman, and she always wore a suit. Always heaps of women, black women, Spanish women who were divas. You can do anything. I remember Keith had a party there once. Sylvester, Stone Ross, Chris Jones, Debbie Harry, all those people used to go. So what? I mean, I wasn't a body sort of broke where your mind sort of takes a back seat. This is what I live for. Actually lost 3 relationships over the garage. And I lived for it for 8 years. It didn't go away. I've got to go. That's what it was. It was a combination of, you know, a drug experience plus these guys. These guys. It was great.
In 1981, I met a black guy called Robert in a straight porno theatre where men went to have sex with other men. We were lovers for 6 years. He introduced me to the world of privileged white bourgeois gay men. Summers on Fire Island, dancing at the Saint and Studio 54. I introduced him to my world of the street. Summers in the East Village, dancing at Paradise Garage. He had this extraordinary collection of sheets that we're always fucking and sleeping on that were so kitsch that his mother would send him new sheets for Christmas, and they were always floral, psychedelic, sort of tacky designer sheets. And I thought they were so fabulous. I started stealing them and inheriting them and painting on them as canvas. And I gave him one for an anniversary gift one day, which had the story of how we met in this porn cinema. He loved it but was horrified, and he hung it in his bedroom for quite a while until his mother came to visit and stay. And then it got relegated to a closet. And when I visited him last year, I noticed it was still in the closet, and I was thinking, oh gosh, you know, it was such a personal thing, and I felt bad that he kind of marginalised it again. He was very ill when I visited him, so I couldn't bring it up, and I was tempted to take it because I sensed that he didn't have long to live, and I felt, gosh, if he dies, his parents are just gonna, what are they gonna think of this? But I didn't do anything about it, and he did die, and his parents did take everything, so I don't know what's happened to it. I don't know whether they could even cope with reading it. I think they would have looked at it and got a general sense that it was about their son and about sex, and I think they would have just dumped it. Around 1983, I started painting images related to the AIDS epidemic. These first images were somber, sentimental, and full of yearning. I often used a traditional Valentine's Day message, hand and heart shall never part, when this you see, remember me. In Australia, there was a great deal of misinformation and denial.
I can remember getting rejected several times in bars when they discovered I lived in the plague city. Safe sex meant not fucking with an American. I grew another beard. In New York at that time, safe sex meant no sex. There was a new condition discovered known as sexual compulsion. Men who'd previously been perfectly healthy sluts like myself were suddenly labelled sex addicts, ripe for 12-step programs. Cruising became a quaint, historic activity. Manhattan became like Geelong in the 50s. with little eye contact, lots of girls, and some fabulous haircuts. I was blonde. My friends and fuck buddies were dying horrible deaths. I was convinced I would be dead within 2 years. I was calm and rational. I felt sad. Then I had an HIV antibody test. I was positive. I grew a mustache. Despite the probability of getting it, the who, when and where of it, I was shocked. It was one thing to assume I would be positive and another to hear it from a doctor. My relationship with Robert had finished the year before. My chances for a green card were very doubtful. I had no health insurance. New York was a graveyard, and I had a heavy cocaine habit. So I kept doing coke for another year, and then I moved back to Sydney to die. That year I grew 4 moustaches, 3 beards, and started growing my hair. In 1988, I started work at the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras as a workshop artist and art director.
When I worked at Mardi Gras, they certainly became friends. Not all of them made a commitment to being part of Mardi Gras. Sense the shared sort of personal split because they had energy, they had a very sophisticated political perspective.
In 1990, I felt worn out by the past 2 years as a community artist and wanted to process my feelings alone. The work came out spontaneously over a period of months. I had started taking AZT, ketoconazole, Zovirax and Bactrim and felt oppressed by the medical process.
First, most of the work around AIDS was about grief, loss, depression, asexual stuff like sadness. And then suddenly this whole new flowering came along that had attitude, humour, anger, incredible sophisticated leap. And a lot of straight people involved with AIDS are still sort of stuck in the quilt sadness. Oh, isn't it bad what's happening to all you fellas? And oh God, and, you know, very angst-filled. And yet, when they're confronted with this new shift, they're quite taken aback. They don't know how to take these angry, assertive, funny queens making light of a serious situation. Even though my work is a lot more accepted, I mean, there's a case at the moment with Long Bay Jail where the ACON safe-sex posters I did have been up on display all throughout the jail, it's a men's jail, for a year and a half. One of the nuns, who's a social worker at the jail, has been boiling and sitting on it for months and months about the erotic nature of the work, and she's been sticking little bits of paper over the dicks and assholes. And the office staff have been taking them down, and it's a game they've been playing for months and months, apparently. And finally, she took down the posters. She had them taken down because she found them offensive. Now, this is in a jail where, for instance, they do not distribute condoms because men don't have sex in jail, and they do not definitely distribute fits because men don't shoot up in jail, and yet she is offended by images of naked men. Now, this has managed to polarise all the workers in the jail, because there's a lot of gay men who work there who feel that the posters are a very effective educational tool. And a lot of conservative straight people have actually had to decide which side of the fence they're on. Are we going to be offended by a safe-sex message, or are we going to be ruled by this kind of morality that says these things don't exist, we'll just ignore them?
Good afternoon, Sydney Gamers from Mardi Gras. Free speaking, can I help you? I've got your passes here, darling. Yeah. We're here all night. Yeah, I've got them.
Well, I was asked by the HIV support group, which is part of ACON, to help them conceptualise a float for the parade. And as an HIV positive man, it was a great opportunity to give them an identity. The float's going to be a huge puppet in the style of a Mexican skeleton, similar to the Day of the Dead festival in Mexico. And when I presented them with the idea, some people responded that it was a negative image to portray a skeleton and an image of death for a group that is about life. But the other half of the group felt that to own an image was to deny the power of a negative image. The same way that for us to call ourselves dykes, poofters, queens, and to use the derogatory images that straight society usually applies to us and take them back diffuses the power of them over us. We own them.
This year I published a book called Toxic Queen, which is like a cultural history of fagdom. It's also a textbook of 90s attitude. I wanted to move the work out of the art temples and galleries and into a different, more accessible arena.
I got a letter from a friend in New York last week telling me thanks for sending me a copy of the book and abusing me because I'd used a letter that he'd written me and included it without his permission. I hate when people rip off my stuff and include it, yet I've got this need to, at the moment, take and use whatever I can grab to create my own stuff. So I'm a bit of a rebel and a bit of a hypocrite, but you know, that's life.
Could you tell us what happened to Peter's artwork after he died?
Well, Peter died last year from AIDS, and he died without making a will. And he discussed his death and his wishes for his work and belongings before he died. But he died so suddenly that the family took control because he died without a will. I felt appalled because I know what Peter wanted for his work. He wanted to live on, and he wanted the Powerhouse or the Australian National Gallery to have the work so that it would be accessible to the public. And because I worked with Peter for the duration of his career, he wanted me to have a big say in what happened to the work. And I don't have that legal right.
Is there anything that you can do to rectify the situation?
I could spend the next 3 years fighting for the right to have a say over his work, but I don't have 3 years because I'm HIV positive. I don't really want to go through the stress of battling with a unsympathetic family.
Do you think it's more difficult for artists to confront the prospect of writing a will?
I think it is because we don't want to acknowledge that we're mortal, and it seems fatalistic to acknowledge that we have a defined lifespan. But I've found it for myself an empowering experience to actually know that my work will live on, that it will go to the places that I want it to go to. I've personally in my life seen an enormous change in the last 20 years in terms of identity and strength of community, and I would like to see that preserved.
Great, okay, it will be.
Thank you.
We might just get a wide shot so we can establish them
fine.
there together.
I'm just going to get another pair of pants. I borrowed those, they're very nice.
You like them?
Gorgeous.
Sure you could.
At the moment, I think a sexual relationship isn't a priority. I think my focus is on my emotional relationships with friends and my peers and my sisters, my inner circle. That is my prime sharing emotional thing, and that kind of intimacy is crucial to me. And I spent 20 years like angst, like, what's going wrong, processing relationships and, making that my priority. And I often put my own work on the back burner because the relationship took first place, and that's crazy. I don't think I'm that widely accepted. I think amongst, my peers, I'm not saying anything particularly profound. I'm actually just confirming a communication and a language that is existing, is developing anyway. But for a lot of people out there, it's so alien because they don't understand the reality of gay people's lives. They really don't. I don't think they have a dialogue with our community at all. What they see are maybe footage from the TV news on Mardi Gras. They see a few headlines, but they don't know the nitty-gritty of what our lives are about. My priority as an artist has always been to record and celebrate our lives. Having lived through an extraordinary time of redefinition and deconstruction of identities, from camp to gay to queer, and seeing our lives and histories marginalised every day, we all have a responsibility to speak out. We just have to trust our inner queen's instinct. Oh, and I shaved off my moustache last week.